Are you kidding me? That's what?
Yeah, every so often it happens that Ryan is right.
100% right. Not even a little bit right.
Tucker Pullman, 2 points last game.
No kidding.
My man!
Hey, neither does me running shirtless, but that turned out very well.
Welcome to the PP1 podcast.
Oh, man, I'm hitting it. I'm not going to lie. Things are going well with the button pushing. It's if you're going to be good at something, you be good at that.
Pushing buttons?
Pushing buttons.
Yeah, no, I respect that.
Got a little bit of a laggy connection. Once again, on my Wi-Fi downstairs, I'm going to have to invest in a booster. Hey, people, if you'd like to sponsor a show, you can sponsor a booster so Ryan has a decent connection. You know, it's a good idea. Welcome to the PP1 podcast. We're testing out a new look for the playoffs. So I went retro hockey card, as we've been doing our retro hockey cards. I'm thinking. I'm a thinker. This is what we're going to be doing. Like, imagine they go all the way and you get to see this goofy looking thing for the next 2.5 months.
It's been so long since we've not only won, been on the verge of being back in the dance, back in the playoffs. I can't even remember what it felt like, because I don't know about you, but I don't really think of the 2020 bubble. It was just so odd. It's not the same. But not only going in, but it's like this expectations. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like what do we expect? I don't even know what to do with my hands.
Exactly. Oh, by the way, in case you're wondering, that's not Ted.
I am not Ted.
That is Dan Mackles, a very good friend of the show. He said, I'm like, hey, man, we were maybe going to do a show this week. Ted's got a busy week and he's heading out to Vancouver. He's got some work stuff. He's a busy guy now. And I'm like, I kind of do want to do a show, but I don't have to. And I'm like, Dan, would you like to come? He goes, Ryan, I don't think I have anything else going on. I will put you 6th on our list. No, he didn't say that. He's like, I'd love to come on. So always a good time with our buddy Dan out in the Okanagan. He's enjoying life out there. We still haven't hooked up in person, which that's how it goes, man. I guess we're all busy, but
lives just they just take you in places.
We've been close. You and I have been close.
Yeah.
We've been close a few times.
No, this summer we'll make it happen. Actually, hey, depending on how deep they go and how our schedules line up, how great would it be to watch one of these playoff games in person?
What about on a houseboat? Can we do that? Let's just throw all the money away. I could probably find one. Yeah, let's just throw all the money away. We're going to rent a houseboat for game 2. We'll have to probably get it sponsored because I won't be able to afford anything else after that, because houseboats are expensive out here, in case anybody doesn't know that. But it'll be a good idea. Yeah, I think we got to hook up. Dan, I don't know what you're doing during the playoffs. Like, do you have any commitments at all for any other shows or?
No, nothing at all. Actually, I used to be one of those guys that, especially when the Canucks were in their contending years in 2009 to 2012, I hated watching games with other people. It was just, it was like my private little thing that I would sit a certain way and make sure I was drinking, the same drink. I just didn't like the atmosphere of being surrounded by. I think the Hal Bros call them the normies, right? Like just the regular folk that get on board during the playoffs. I used to hate that, but I made a promise to myself is to try to enjoy it and try to spend some time with buddies when they do throw out the invite to come watch the game. So that's the plan.
Excellent.
Anyways.
So
what about you? Do you have any playoff rituals?
I used to. It's been so long, and I realized none of them worked. So I just started getting rid, holding the towel in the same hand. I was like a big fan of the playoff towel. Just not going to the bathroom until intermission, like all these stupid things. And obviously they never won for us, so I had to start.
It's never worked.
No, it's wearing my my number 10 Pavel Bure jersey, like his rookie year colors one, which I managed to snag on eBay somehow, and long time ago. A certain shirt for game 1, like all those things, and then they started dropping like flies. All those little rituals. I decided that I got to stop. I got to be a real human being and just trust that the guys on the TV screen are the ones in control and not the guy sitting on a couch, which, I don't get that.
Good luck. I mean, I try, but there's still times when it's like, I
stand
didn't
up
watch
here.
the first period. Yeah, right. So, but hey, it's just exciting that we have those options.
Oh, it's great. We're going to be doing a playoff show, like post-game kind of thing. Obviously, wins are guaranteed ones, so I'm not sure how that's going to go. Losses, I don't know if anybody wants to talk Canucks. Plus, you're all going to be listening to Jeff Patterson anyway. But we're going to try to do at least like 2 shows a week instead of our normal one. And I offered to Dan to be one of the 3 Stooges, because we only have 2, but it's a lot more fun if you have 3 Stooges. So sounds like you might be able to help us out for this playoff run. Hopefully, like I said, we're hanging out a couple times a week for a few months.
It's one of those things where sometimes, obviously it's fun to talk about, a big win, but sometimes it's also positive to commiserate with, fellow fans after a heartbreaking defeat instead of, just lying in the fetal position in the corner of the room,
We might have to do that too. So you're right. Sometimes it's just nice to yell and just get it all out of the frame.
Yeah.
That's a good idea. I like where your head's at. So yeah, we're going to do that. It's going to be a lot of fun. Playoffs are coming. It's a real thing. We're talking about the Canucks in the Stanley Cup playoffs this spring, which I don't know if anybody remembers. The last time they were there was against Calgary, and Michael Furland was a big deal. And
see, I don't even remember that series. Right. The
really?
only thing I really remember from that series was I thought they were the favorites, because that whole year, that was the start of the Benning era, right? That was the start of like, okay, this cup core from 2011, they've had their time. It's the rebuild is on. I remember being very upset when they went out and they picked up Ryan Miller, and they picked up Verbata, who ended up having a pretty good year. And I was like,
yeah.
I was probably like the first. That was like the first inkling of like, let's rip it all down, right? And the fact they had success, it was kind of like, oh, like, are we still a good team? Is this still, we still have time with the Sedins and whatnot? And turns out, no, that was almost like one of the worst things that happened to the franchise, was because they thought, oh, maybe we're not that far away. And they kept trying to run it back, if you will. And we all know how that turned out. It was like years and years of, uninspired hockey with a team that was, what was the term? The Sea of Granlunds.
Just, there's so much hurt that is, I think, stored up in this fan base. And there's a lot of fans that were, in elementary school that the last time the Canucks were in a playoff run, and now they're in college. And I think we've got a new adult fan base, which I think is pretty cool. Social media has definitely taken a massive jump since even the Stanley Cup playoffs of 2010, 2011. This is a different time. I'm personally excited. I get to share this now with my kids, who are 13 and 10, and of the promise that if the Canucks were to win the Stanley Cup, I'd pull them out of school for the parade. It's kind of a bit of an empty promise, because realistically, if the greatest thing ever happens, the parade's like June 27th, likely.
They don't need to know that. They don't need to know that.
Yeah. Like, you're probably going to be out of school already, but I'll leave work. It's okay.
I've made it very known that if they ever win the Stanley Cup, I will be taking personal days. You're not going to see me for a few, and I'm, geez, like, imagine if they if this is the problem, is we can't start talking like this, because we start to get ahead of ourselves, and we haven't even seen the puck drop in game 1. We don't even know who they're playing in the first round, but still, it's that dream. It's that sort of that fantasy of like, what would you do if, and if they're up by a bunch late in the third, I know I'm throwing some stuff in a duffel bag and I'm getting ready to drive down to Vancouver, because hopefully people are behaved, but I just want to experience it, right? Because it is truly, it could be for us a once in a lifetime thing. I'm hoping it is at least a once in a lifetime thing.
Yeah, it could be pretty awesome. I should probably get out a few housekeeping things, because I was so excited to see you. No, I was just so excited to see you, and we just started talking. It's like, this is what friends do. Our show, the PP1 Podcast, is obviously brought to you by the Hockey Podcast Network. This is where you're going to find every morsel of goodness for hockey. A menagerie of hockey shows. Trust the process. They're on there. Good guys. Good guys. There's some Leaf shows. There's some Duck shows. There's some King shows. There's a little bit of everything. So if you happen to like one of the other 31 fan bases, which I'm so sorry, but I mean, if you're watching us, thank you. That's where you're going to find the rest of your hockey content. And can't forget DraftKings Sportsbook app, the promo code THPN. That's short for the Hockey Podcast Network, but we shorten it down so it's easier to type. Promo codes are really tough when it becomes a sentence. Same as when you're typing out a podcast title or a brief little memo before you post it. Nobody wants to know the entire story. Put that in the editing part at the bottom, the body. Promo code THPN. That's what I'm trying to get at. And then I don't know, like it's almost playoff time. Dan, you brought up the whole uninspired thing, which I think was pretty funny because the Canucks are playing uninspired, but they also had a clinched T-shirt that came out with the capital IN in there, and I was playing around yesterday with some uninspired.
I think I saw that. Yeah, that's pretty good.
Sometimes you gotta run with it, right? But I mean, they have been playing uninspired lately, and I think it's not even it's before they clinched, obviously. Do you think that they're just kind of going through a little bit of the, not a funk by any means, but kind of just going through the motions? Like, listen, we know we're going to be there, maybe taking it a little bit for granted. And, there is another gear that they're going to jump up again like they did early on in the season. What do you think?
It's all speculation on our part, but there's just a lot of factors. And the first one that all teams deal with is it's a long season. It's a long season. It's a grind. I know a lot of people were looking at that 9-game homestand thinking, oh, that's great. It's like, it is and it isn't, right? Because that's a long stretch. I think like a 5-game homestand is kind of great. And you take a look after about the 5-game mark, even though they had a couple losses, and before that, it's just like it's almost like Groundhog Day, perhaps. And that's the beauty of all the traveling. It obviously it's a strain. Obviously, traveling can be taxing in itself, but it's that variety. It sort of changes things up, a chance to be sharp,
right,
as opposed to like a long stretch like that. So all teams go through it, and I just think it's our time, and you can't ignore the fact that injuries have started to show up, right? And the biggest one being Demko, and Smith's been fine. It's been nice to see Seeloff's come in there and post a couple of W's against, let's be honest, some bottom feeder teams, but not having your number one guy in there, that's a big thing. And I think that's, for me, to jump ahead to like my concerns for the playoffs, that's my number one concern. Is Thatcher Demko going to be ready, and will he be up to game shape before the puck drops in game one?
I think what we've looked at, Casey DeSmith's actually been pretty decent on this run to be out. He's held his own on, a team that basically you kind of have to almost look like an all-star. Otherwise, everything else looks like it's, I can't believe that guy didn't get a shutout every single game, or they didn't win 5-1. Like, Casey DeSmith's been pretty good, but you're right. This kind of big stretch where he's kind of had to be the guy. You see this on a lot of teams when significant injuries come in, or a group of them anyway. Demko's obviously a big one. So now you've got a guy like Casey DeSmith who gets thrusted into the starter's role, and he kind of was the only option until they decided, like, listen, we probably do have to play a second goaltender at some point, because we can't just wear this guy out, because he's not used to being the number one guy getting the minutes. It's the same as if you lose a Tyler Myers, or you lose a Hronek last year, which we didn't really get to see much of him. But you start losing those middle guys that actually have a role as a defenseman or as a second line forward or a top line center. And all those guys start moving up the depth chart. And now you're playing kind of out of your normal space where you're comfortable, where you can get away with certain things. Or not get away with, but that this is kind of where I thrive, like as a third line winger, or I'm a second pairing or third pairing defenseman. As soon as you get thrust into kind of more responsibility, unless you're, that diamond in the rough, like a Dakota Joshua, where all of a sudden you're like, wow, or even Connor Garland to a certain extent. I'm not saying he's a diamond in the rough, but, kind of when this is kind of what we're expecting. And then a few of those guys actually do jump the shark and they actually get past that. Everybody else kind of understands where their position is on a team. And if they're thrust into a different spot, it's pretty tough to, acclimate yourself without enough time to kind of figure things out. And even then, if you think about it, if you're there too long, all of a sudden you realize like, hey, I can't hold my own in this spot. There's a reason that guy's ahead of me. There's a reason that these guys are around me. So they can kind of insulate my mistakes. And, I brought it up numerous times, but like a guy like Kevin Bieksa, when, we started seeing Salo get injured and we started seeing Edler get injured. Well, Kevin Bieksa at the time when all those were going on, he wasn't a number one or number two defenseman. He, eventually became an elevated guy. But, when you start playing out of your comfort zone, at some point it catches up.
Yeah, you see it. Look at how effective that third line was when it was Bluger with Joshua and Garland, right? And it's funny now how Garland has moved up, and I think I even heard on one of the talk shows today, they're like, well, Garland with Pettersson, that's just a great fit, and they did well when they put them there over the last few games. I was like, hey man, do people forget that Garland started the season on Pettersson's line, and it just didn't work, right? It just wasn't clicking for some reason. I know there's a lot of other things that were swirling around Garland at the time, and maybe he wasn't quite sure where he was going to fit. But when he was in that spot, you can only assume they're playing against softer matchups defensively, going against other teams, bottom six, and that's where they thrive. Now, having Joshua come back with Garland playing with Miller, that's nice. It's they did well in the Anaheim game, I believe, and they didn't really look bad the last game, but sure would be nice to go put them back together with Bluger and have that threat on the third line. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I understand what you're saying, but sometimes, moving those guys that are performing well in lower levels to bolster the top lines is great. But I also saw a graphic where it's like, I think there's like 2 goals from the bottom 6 since the All-Star game, like something like that, like 2 or 3 goals. It's not good, right? And you're gonna need something out of them, in those tight games that we've seen lately, like the 2-1s, the 3-2s. You're gonna need production from that end of your lineup.
Wouldn't it be worth, that's a great point. Like, wouldn't it be worth putting that line back together and just letting that thing go? And maybe they are the catalyst. Like maybe they're the ones that are going to go get goals for the next couple of games. And, people are going to crap on Pettersson and Miller and like the guys that are supposed to be getting, the lion's share of the goals and the points. But all of a sudden, maybe that kind of kickstarts it and you get the guys doing. So maybe it gives them some more time to breathe so they can actually just start playing hockey, not thinking. Because it sure looks like they're thinking, not only at 5-on-5, but the obvious one is the power play, which this show is based on. It looks so like it leaked. The joke has been made, I'm sure, somewhere else too, but it looks like it needs a defibrillator because they're using that umbrella that kind of get it to Quinn, pass it to Petey, pass it to Miller, maybe use the guys down low, but basically they're just shuffling between 3 guys at the top. Whereas, was it last year, the year before, it was get the puck to Pettersson on kind of the half wall and you get the clapper. Then it used to be Brock Besser. Then there's been like a progression of like the guy that's supposed to get the puck. And right now, I think they're relying too much on what Quinn Hughes does as the starting point, when if you let all 5 guys touch the puck and actually utilize that bumper position, I do believe, seeing how it worked amazingly well to start the season, that they could probably get back to where they were. And quite frankly, like I think, was it Blake Price said something last night about that it was like the worst power play, the one where they gave up like the puck a bunch of times, I think on PP2, and they gave up like a ton. He said, this was the worst power play this season. I said, you're actually wrong. I said, all 5 guys touched the puck. This is probably not the worst one, but it was definitely in the middle, because the worst ones, they barely even had a shot. At least they were getting some movement going. Like, it feels so stale. And they've been so good at 5-on-5 that when their power play was going, like that was the other thing that bumped them up to tops in the league.
Well, yeah, because they have been so productive. I mean, look no further than Niels Holdlander and his 20 plus goals,
Mhm.
all on even strength, right? You take a look at when their power play was really effective. It was, when they had kind of like the two threats where Horvat was that great bumper guy. Like he was great at
Mhm.
like finding a soft spot, getting fed out from behind the goal line, and teams started to have to pay attention to that. And that's when you saw that Pedersen was kind of able to get more space to be set up for that one timer. They don't kind of have that right now with the bumper spot. And I was talking with some guys yesterday, and I thought, with how rough it's been and how difficult they have lately trying to recreate that, why not try to change it up a little bit and go for a little bit of havoc in front of the net? Joshua scored that beautiful goal between his legs. I think it was against who was it against? Was it against Anaheim?
Mhm.
Um, that was why not just throw him, go stand in front of the net, cause some havoc, and try to give a different look, because like you said, everything right now, it just looks stale.
Yeah. It's frustrating because I can figure it out. You can figure it out. We don't even play in the NHL. We might play beer league here and there, but
But it's not even like and that's
it's
the fun part
we can
about
all
being a
see
fan
it
is
though.
yeah, yeah. But maybe when you're in it, when you're the coaching staff and you see that it was productive earlier, and it's essentially the same guys, save like ever since Kuzmenko left, they've been kind of had a rotating cast of characters. I don't like Garland on the first unit. I don't think he fits. I don't think he distributes the puck well in that setup. Like Garland's the guy that he goes in on the forecheck, and he creates havoc, sort of, in just like that standard 5-on-5 flow
He's
of
the
play.
starter pistol.
Yeah. So, but on the
That
on
gets
the
me
on
going.
on the power play, it just doesn't work. And then, you think about, well, you want to balance out the two units. No, you don't. Just as long as the first one's cooking, the last one usually only gets 30 seconds anyways. So why not try, Hoglander in that bumper spot? I've heard some people say that he doesn't have a good enough shot, which is fine, but you want to talk about creating chaos. You're going to tell me that guy won't be able to fish out some pucks, in the corners? Because those are the ones that I always get frustrated by. Like,
Mhm.
tide draw that sort of goes to the boards, and the scrum is lost and then they clear it out. Because I mean, there's 25 seconds gone right there. So it's just, you
Exactly.
need to try something different. And I think there are other options that have not been looked at that I think they should give it a shot.
Yeah, it's getting a little bit late for them to let it keep running this way. Like there have been successful versions of what they've done, and you're right. Like just load it up. I mean, who cares about the second power play unit if the first one's scoring? Like if they score, newsflash, that's the end of the power play.
Yeah.
So, you might as well utilize what you have. And they have great trigger guys. They've got Elias Pettersson. I mean, Brock Besser is closing in on 40 goals. You've got JT Miller. Like you can cycle a few of those guys through position and figure out where they
They-
make the most sense.
They're too good to be this bad.
Yeah.
It's just they're too good to be this inept. And I am Pedersen's biggest fan. Like I think that guy's a special player. I'm thrilled that he's locked up. I'm thrilled that they got him at the dollar figure that they did. Um, really looking forward to seeing him find his game again. And I'm not saying he's been bad. I think his defensive play has been a lot better of late, because there was a stretch there in like just after the All-Star game where it just felt like at least once or twice a game his line was just stuck in his own zone, and they were, getting scored on, and not being able to, handle whatever line they were matched up against. I totally believe in this kid. I totally believe he's got everything it is required to be an impact player, because we've seen it. We've seen him, like, from even his rookie year. There's times when he enforces his will on the game. That's something that has been missing since the All-Star game, personally, and in my personal opinion. I really like, he, as much as Demko is so vital, if he can show that he's able to elevate his game and, like I said, enforce his will on the game come the postseason. This team's got some stuff going for it.
He's not, you could
right?
call it an X factor if you want, but I mean, maybe he is a kind of an X factor because you have in a lot of your players. If Elias Pettersson is going, everything's going at that point, realistically, because if he's going, that means the puck's getting to him and it's going in the net, which means guys are making plays to make all that happen. Like it's, the arms connected to the whatever, like everything just kind of connects like Legos at a certain point. And Pettersson, he's been streaky, but at the same time, look at the guy's stats. Like
They're great.
You can go down probably through a lot of players, and we'll talk about Quinn Hughes in a second. But I mean, those numbers aren't flukes. There is no fluke in his production and all of his other numbers. The fact that everybody's joked about the Canucks, their PDO for most of the season. Like at some point, it's not a fluke anymore, and it's not luck. At some point, you're thinking, okay, they are on a season-long heater. And this one season may not be sustainable, but in this season, inside of that is sustainable. Everything happening has been a year long, just an absolute bender. So yeah, you're going to see a few bumps and bruises. Like you said, it's an 82 game schedule. And until somebody wins all 82 in a row and looks fresh and then goes and wins 16 in the playoffs, there's going to be some downsides. I mean, we are beating up on this team. And I just looked at the standings last night. Haven't looked at them today. But I mean, ho-hum, they're a couple points back again of first overall. We're complaining about things because it's been too good. So we need to find fault somewhere.
Oh yeah.
We're picking this thing apart, and everybody's freaking out. They're thinking, are you guys worried? Or are you guys concerned? Like, well, I'm concerned in the sense that things aren't going well right now, but you can't tell me that this team isn't going to look amazing come game one of the playoffs. I'm sorry. There's just too much talent there for things to fall apart that badly.
No, but again, let's rewind a year. Let's say, God forbid, we're Boston Bruins fans, and we're sitting here talking about how can anyone conceivably beat this team 4 out of 7 games. No chance. What happens? They lose. In 7 games, right? So anything, it takes just a couple little bounces. That's why, I was touching on Pettersson. It takes the wrong guy having a slump at the wrong time, right? I've said this before too. If you came to me at the beginning of the season and said, it's going to be a 100-point team, they're going to be challenging for the division lead. Will you take it? Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Sign me up, man. That's great.
Do I have to put any money on this? Do I have to guarantee this somehow with a down payment?
But you also take a look at I remember it felt like there are seasons where it's like that team's the odds-on favorite. That team's going to win the Stanley Cup. Like when Vegas won it, you're just kind of like, kind of seemed like that really was destined to happen. Colorado, other than that time, the Lightning got swept in the first round by the Blue Jackets. They went on to win 2 Stanley Cups. It's just kind of, but then there's those seasons. And again, I relate everything back to my experience as being a Canuck fan. But when the Canucks went to the finals in 2011, it's just, other than them, it just seemed like it was a wide open field. Like it just seemed like there was nobody else that you thought like, well, I hope we don't run into them. And I think we all probably felt that way about Chicago, but that was just more due to the demons that we had. It wasn't because we thought they were, they weren't as good of a team as they were the previous 2 years, right? Despite having said that, it did take till, overtime of game 7. But I look at the, I look at the league and it's like, everybody's got flaws. The one team that does really scare me is Dallas. I think Dallas is really deep and no one talks about them. They don't have any sexy players. They're just good, right? So that team's, I would be worried about matching up against them, even though the Canucks actually have played them pretty well. I think their record was 1-1-1 versus the Stars. But and that's why I think there's so much focus on God, we need Petey going, and Demko's got to be good. And geez, if Lindholm can just find his game, because it feels like everything could come together. And if things bounce right, this team could go on a run, right? And that's the I think most exciting part about watching this season. It was just like again, touching back on when they were in the playoffs in 2015, nothing about that team felt like, we got something here. It was just kind of like, well, this is nice. Isn't this nice?
I like the playoffs. I remember this.
Yeah, this is okay. It's better than Torch storming into the opposition's locker room. I can get behind this.
Yeah.
So I think that's where all the is from my end, anyways, right? Like the take this versus what we've been used to. 100%. It's great. It's awesome. But the other part of me is like, God damn it, I just want to see him win. And this feels like, who knows how long these windows are supposed to be. Like, remember when Calgary had that monster year and Goudreau, Kachuk, Lindholm line was just lighting up the league, and people are like, geez, they could win the cup. And then it was done. It was over, right? Like windows can shut like this, and especially for the fact that this did sort of come out of nowhere. Yes, we knew Miller was good. Yes, we knew Pettersson was good. Quinn Hughes, all world, took his game to a new level, but we were not expecting this. So you almost kind of feel like, God damn, I hope they don't blow this opportunity by a quick exit.
Well, it went from, Bedard to the President's Trophy. Like, those are very different conversations. And thankfully, we've been able to toy around with that for a whole season. You've got a shirt on right now, and we talk about making a run. And I believe, if I can see properly, I think I've seen that online somewhere before, but it looks like the epic Deke in double overtime, Mike Vernon versus, as you said earlier, how do you pronounce his name?
I pronounce it Pavel Bure. And you're Bure, right?
I'm a Bure guy. So this is the debate. Like, I wanted to bring this up on the show. We got a few people watching the show. I don't know if you guys want to comment in. Grant, I don't know if you're there. Who else is out there? But I mean, is it Bure or is it Bure? Because I've heard it enough times both ways that it's a decent debate. I mean, we're a pretty fickle fan base, so these are the kind of things that could divide a nation. But
that's just the way I've always. I'd have to go back and listen to maybe some very early calls of Jim Robson or Tommy Larscheid, because I think I maybe that's where I got it from, or I don't know. It's just, I think I've always just pronounced it Bure, Pavel Bure. Yeah, I don't know. Bure sounds
like her.
I don't know. Yeah, it sounds sort of like it's very Canadianized, I guess. Not that Bure sounds all that much more Russian, but it's just the way I've always pronounced it.
I'd love to know. It's just one of those funny things. Like, are you sure that's how it's spelled? Like, it's unless he tells you. It's like I don't know if you've heard like the New Heights podcast, but like Travis and Jason Kelsey, but it's like Kels, but they just ran with it. Like, all right, well, what is it? Because whatever your name is, we'll call you that.
I guess so.
John or like Shelofs, I guess is how you pronounce it, or Hoglander. Like, there's all these things, like, we North Americanize so many things and just make it sound what way you want to hear. And yet,
remember Robert Long? He played for, I believe he was at King, and
he was with Pittsburgh and Chicago, I think too.
He played for a lot of teams. I remember he had a cup of coffee in Detroit, and like I think it was spelled Lang.
That's right.
And people were like, "Oh, Robert Lang," and he's like, "It's actually pronounced Long." And then people started calling him Long, and then I believe there's the last couple of years, it's like, "What are you guys just call me Lang? It's fine." Right?
We're this far. We're this far. Okay.
Whatever, man.
Yeah, I'm gonna be gone before you know it. Don't worry about it.
He was actually a pretty good player. I remember.
Yeah.
I remember he put up some pretty decent numbers back in the day.
Did he win with Detroit?
I want to say no, but I have no memory of him hoisting the cup, because for as long as I've been watching hockey, all the way back in 1988, I've watched every single Stanley Cup final, every team hoist the cup, and I have no memory of him hoisting it, but I
I'm
could be
looking right
wrong. I am
now.
getting old. Oh,
We
I'm going to say
we
no. It's
okay.
great.
Your
Googling.
guess is no. I'm gonna say
So
yeah. It was on the 06-07 team, which was
they
Detroit, right?
won. They won in 08,
I'm just
and yeah, they won 2 in the
07 was.
70s.
I'm sorry. I take that back. I would keep getting those. Here we go. Ice Hockey World Cups. Retired. This is me just fast
I
forwarding
know, it's
here.
good.
This is the content people are looking for. I know everybody else does it. Coyotes were defeated in 7 games by the Red Wings. They played 7 games. It
Czech
doesn't look
player.
like he won awards. Here we go. NHL All-Star Game, the Golden Hockey Stick, best Czech player.
No, he
No,
was never on it.
no.
No, he never won the cup.
Fun fact: never won the Stanley Cup, folks. You heard
Never
it
won
here
the Stanley
first.
Cup.
Not that anyone was looking, but we were looking, so it's fine. So hey, sometimes people got to know this stuff. So a couple things. Go for it. You had something to say there?
No,
Go
I
for
was
it.
just this is not related in any way, but it just made me think about it because it was sort of topical. Just taking a quick look at the teams he played for, and he played for franchises that did have a lot of success. Pittsburgh, LA's won some cups. He had a cup of coffee in Chicago and Detroit, but yet he was never on any of the teams that won a Stanley Cup, right? Isn't it bananas that we just saw Jeff Skinner of Buffalo reach 1,000 games in the NHL, and he has never once played beyond game 82 of the regular season? That's
I thought that was wrong
wild.
when they were bringing that up. I said whenever that game was, I'm like, no, they're wrong. That can't be right. It can't be right, and it's right. I couldn't imagine like that good of a player. It's mind-boggling.
I mean, you had 1,000. You've played 1,000 games in the NHL, and you have no idea what it's like in the postseason. This must be wild, right? Like even Shane Doan, who was exiled out in the desert, he saw the playoffs a couple times. I think they went to the conference final the year that the Kings won it in 2012. So at least he got some sort of.
But he was with the Jets though too. Didn't he make a run with the Jets?
I don't think the Jets ever went deep. I think he was there at the Jets last year ever, and I think their last year they lost in 6 to Detroit or something like that. That was like 97, I believe, or 96, somewhere around there. But it's just it's wild. You take a look at, and again too, like it's not like Jeff Skinner's a household name, like even amongst hockey fans are like, oh, I recognize that guy. He plays in the East, right? But you think about how many like amazing careers out there that they had little team success, and Marcel Dion was a pretty famous one. Just look here, people here love Marcus Naslund, right? He was probably one of the best left wingers for a span of 3-4 years, but he never had any success, right? I think's entering that conversation. I don't want to jinx it, and this is the year they go on a run, but I'd say Connor McDavid. Like Connor McDavid is amazing. He's the greatest. Speaking of Pavel Bure, he's the most exciting player I've watched since Pavel Bure. He's like what?
It's because he does everything.
Yeah. He's not a good defensive player.
Call it at some point.
That's
you
the one thing that
though.
Yeah, but I mean,
do you get at Edmonton?
Is he gonna like, I mean, they're just gonna back up the Brinks truck just to keep him. What's he gonna want to do? Is he gonna be like LeBron James and take his services to like South Beach or something? Like, what's he gonna do? What are the Oilers gonna do if they match up versus Vegas, and Vegas does what we all think they're gonna do and magically get healthy for game 1 and they get bounced? Like, what would you do? Like, do you sign another long-term deal? Do you just say like whatever? Because he's got 1 year left, I believe, right?
I think he's closing in. Yeah.
Yeah, because I know
I don't know. We've
Draisaitl's
had
up
this
soon.
discussion a few times. Yeah, I think both of those guys. You're gonna have. I think one would stay, although maybe both don't. I mean, Calgary, look, they completely changed up their team. They also didn't have Draisaitl and
They didn't have a
McDavid.
choice though. They had to. They had to change their team because Gaudreau walked, right?
Mhm.
They can't let McDavid walk, right? Like if he doesn't sign July 1st of the first summer that he's eligible to extend, then you got to think like, what are they going to do? So this is going to be a very interesting playoff for the Edmonton Oilers. And they're a funny team, right? Like they have this sexy top end when it comes to offensive talent. They've got some decent players around them, but I think it's their depth and their goaltending where it's like, unless those two studs can carry them to these blowout wins in the postseason, which is kind of hard. I don't know what's going to happen with them.
That's the beauty of the Stanley Cup playoffs. That is the
Is it,
beauty
though?
of the Stanley Cup playoffs. Well, it is because we have no idea what's going to happen. We all think we know what's going to happen. Like, oh, these guys should win. Like you talk about Tampa, and then they get swept, and they're thinking, okay, that wasn't in the script. We don't have
Yeah,
that.
exactly.
So what do we do? I want to get into a couple things. First and foremost, we talked about the Coyotes. So their big sell, their last bastion of hope is this land auction in Phoenix, that they still have to win this land auction to be able to build an arena. So it's just such a joke, this whole scenario. We all saw the game against Arizona last night, and I joked
It's
about
sad.
watching. It's so sad. I joked about watching the Canucks play, actually the Coyotes in Kelowna here in Pettersson's rookie year. It was the last preseason game, and they hosted it in Kelowna, which was awesome, by the way.
Yeah.
Like to have Vancouver Canucks play in your home rink. But it was like the whole team looked like garbage, and I'm like, great, here we go. We're gonna have one of those seasons. Game one, Pettersson goes like bar down.
Yeah.
Oh, you could have done that a week ago at my house, and that would have been cool. So, I mean, but it looked like, from a TV standpoint, you're playing in a junior hockey rink, and that's what it looked like in Arizona, and it wasn't even sold out. So, anyway, just a quick bullet point on the Coyotes and the fact that they're still somehow hanging around, letting this story carry on when it's inevitable. Like there has to be a time where they just call it, get the doctor to come in and call it in the room.
I think what would be best for the fan base and the city of Phoenix is for them to leave at this point, because nothing's worked. They've tried. Like I had friends that went down to their old arena. I was it Glendale?
Yeah.
And it, like apparently it was the equivalent of Vancouver to Abbotsford, right? Like they were playing out in Abbotsford, and like no one's going to want to make that drive, and there's like nothing out there. But the arena and the entertainment district around it was apparently like really great. The problem was they were expecting a lot of development residentially around it, and it just never happened apparently. But they want to be in that market because of the size of the market. I think if that's the end goal, it might be best to just at this point take the team out of there, go to a different, a different market. There's a lot of talk about Houston. They say they want to go back to Atlanta again. I don't know if that's a great idea, but give some owner, somebody that can sort of come into that area fresh, have an arena in place, get all that stuff ready to go before they bring it back, and then just bring it back as something completely different. Because I think the Phoenix Coyotes, the Arizona Coyotes, it's just it's like, oh, those guys, and they've never been relevant. They're just a drain on the league, and playing is kind of kitschy as it is to have them play in this college arena. It's such a bad look for the team.
Well, it's a bad look for the league too. Like that they're holding on. They're like, we're willing to let this slide. We're willing to. Well, they said they're going to do this, so we're going to allow like this temporary setup. you're one of the big four, and you're going to allow one of your 32 teams to play in a minor hockey league arena. There's no way any other team, like, I get the market thing. I do get all of that. But you're right. It has to, you can come back. I mean, if they're going to allow you to come back to Atlanta after that was a incredibly failed try out there, and they pulled the plug so quickly and moved them to Winnipeg. Like, that happened overnight. It happened within a couple months.
Fast.
This has
That
been
was
going
fast.
on for 20 years. So you have to call it, and it's okay. You can be wrong and then come back and be right eventually. I'm sure that market is good, but you need to figure it out the right way, and you can't just wait it out. Like, go make a ton of money, charge an exorbitant amount of money to come back into Phoenix, Arizona, and get your expansion or relocation money back tenfold and make it something. But I don't think it's fair to everyone else. Like, we're all watching this and you're like, we all really want to celebrate the NHL, and there's a ton of reasons why we shouldn't, but we all love this league. It's, especially as Canadians, but this league has been something impressive, and they're really trying hard to keep something that just isn't working out. And, there's plenty of other places where it would succeed overnight. I mean, Winnipeg's a great example, and I know they're going through some tough stuff there, but I mean, it worked right away, and they were making their money instantly. Like, you got to think about the merch and, the TV deal and all those things. Well, nobody wants to watch that if it's not even worth watching on TV. If you've got cameras there, but it looks like garbage, everybody's making fun of it. What's the point?
Yeah. It's like I said, it's just something that it feels as though Bettman's reaching his wit's end with it. It feels as though he's like, you know what? You guys have been giving so many opportunities to make this right, and it's just not working. So it might be best to, pack it up and then try again down the road. That's just my opinion on it. And again, too, it's like we like to be sort of give off the impression up here in Canada that we're above all that. Hey, man, like, I was in that arena, Rogers Arena, over the last 10 years, and it was empty in there. It's, there's, the passion is real, but when the team sucks and they go through, nearly a decade's worth of failure, like, we experienced, it erodes. And we're lucky that it turned around, because who knows, right? Like,
but the thing was, even in this market, you can literally sell hope. Like, people will still show up on the idea of hope. You can't sell hope down there if people aren't even paying attention, and if you can't even fit people in. Like, it is. I mean, the Canadian market is a little different. I mean, it has failed in a few markets. Don't get me wrong. I mean, geez, the Senators have been close. The Canucks have been close. Canucks were close in the late 90s, right? So when Aquilini bought it over Ghilardi, like, that was a big thing. I mean, the Canucks were not in good times back in the day, but at the same time, like, there's American markets where it's taken for granted. I mean, even Detroit, when everything that they were going through with the auto, or like the economy collapse and everything, like, Detroit, one of the poorest cities in America, they made it work. I mean, they had some history to go, but even after the history died off, they still made it work. They still got butts and seats. They built a new arena. They had these things. Pittsburgh's gone through their thing. There's been a few teams that have gone through the absolute ringer, and you think, like, geez, even the Islanders. I mean, that whole, like, the Brooklyn Islanders and all that, for a time, that was a bit laughable, but everybody knew, like, they're going to figure it out. The Islanders are going to come back, and they did. So it is possible, but if you want to be one of those major sports, and I mean, it's a multi-billion-dollar industry, sometimes those hard decisions, like, go make that money and come back a little bit later. There's nothing wrong with it. So anyway, I don't want to talk about the Coyotes any longer, because that's not fun. It's not fun for me. It's not fun for you, Dan. You're the guest. I do want to talk about two more things.
Okay.
I'm not sure how we're going to do it, but I'm going to go hopefully in order I believe that we'll get the best run on this. So one is Seeloffs, or however you pronounce his name, and we'll finish with Quinn Hughes. We legitimately have I can't believe we're here at this point in the Canucks season, or in this part of our team. There is a new goalie controversy, I believe, brewing, that I think Casey Smith and Artur Seeloffs, like, it's going to be talked about, And if they think that they've got something and you can get him in on the cheap, he's played some pretty good hockey. And I think after whatever kind of run, because I mean, once Demko comes back, obviously they can send him down and they can have a nice little run down there. But you now have another goaltender that can be a very solid backup next year. And you can afford to maybe give Demko less games and still afford yourself a winner in that. What do you think?
I think he's looked good in his 2 starts. You just can't discount who the opponents were. So,
I agree.
I think the biggest issue the Canucks have when it comes to constructing your roster, it's the cap, right? So I think DeSmith's around $1 million, right? Like he's not very expensive. I don't know with his sort of let's say the hit that's been on his numbers ever since that wild game where they had all those penalties against them. Up until then, his numbers were great. I don't know what he's gonna ask for. If it's too much, then okay, maybe you look at going for Seeloffs. I don't think that's great because we also tend to be like every fan base loves its backup. Remember when Spencer Martin first came in and people were like, this is great. Like he hasn't, had a regulation loss and all 10 starts or whatever it was. But you looked at him and you're like, I don't know. Everyone's so quick to anoint. Like I remember Eddie Lack when he first came in. No offense to Eddie Lack, he had himself a fine career, but like this guy, put this guy in, and it's like I just don't. Think
and they made him the guy. And they made him the guy.
That wasn't a good move, right? He just wasn't a starter. So I think what the Canucks, hopefully, I'd like to see is they could bring DeSmith back at around the same price tag. If not, maybe see if there's someone else. Like I don't know what like a Cam Talbot or something like that. Because I mean, he's starting in LA. And I think he's like league close to league minimum. I'm not. I mean, obviously, he's probably going to get it.
How long do you let the Artie party last? Though, like, do you just keep running it back? No. Just in general with the Canucks as a franchise, like, do you just keep running it back in Abbotsford? Like, at what point do you bring him up or do you trade him because there's no succession plan?
I think like if we're talking this year. He's as soon as Demko's healthy, he's back to the minors. Like,
well, that's what I'm saying. I'm just saying. Like,
so for next year,
after all said and done, yeah.
Next year, a lot's going to depend on do they feel that he's ready for the backup role? Because you want your backup to play like 20 plus games. 20, 25 games. Is he ready for that? Is he ready to go in there and steal games? Because let's be honest, man. Like. The beginning of the year when they were, putting DeSmith in on a pretty decent rotation, he was getting wins. He was getting wins where you're like, that's a good performance. Is Seeloffs ready for that? I don't know, right? And the only way you're going to find out is if you put him in. But if it goes sideways, and Demko goes down, and Demko, unfortunately, has a history of being hurt at some point. He is. And so do you want to be like, crap. Now we're going to go with Seeloffs and who's in the minors. So that's why I'm a little bit gun shy to just anoint him the backup. I'd like to see him at least have maybe one more year in the minors. That's just my opinion on it.
Okay. No, this is what we do, Dan. This is what we do. This is a safe space.
We share opinions.
We share opinions. It's a safe space. This is what we do. Finally, I mean, wow, things got bright there all of a sudden for you. Finally, it's okay. Some just went really bright. It was like it's like a reverse eclipse. What would that be called?
I don't know.
I don't know. We'll find out on Monday. This Quinn Hughes guy, you've been following his career. You've been following his season in Vancouver. I believe you've seen him on the ice once a game at least. He is on pace to be only the 10th player to hit 90 points as a Vancouver Canuck in a season, which doesn't say a whole lot for the franchise. However, he's also definitely the first defenseman to have done, or is it second defenseman to have done that? He's going to be the all-time leading defenseman, I think, at some point next season. He's not a lock for the Norris. Let's be honest. The NHL has got some pretty talented defensemen, but he's definitely in the top 3. And could he win it? Absolutely. But let's let it all shake out. Quinn Hughes is having a season for the ages. Go ahead. Sorry.
No, a lot of people will probably be upset if he doesn't win the Norris Trophy.
Of course he would.
You see a lot of a lot of heated debates on Twitter about, who's better, Makar or Hughes. This is the way I look at it. I don't care. I love that we have a defenseman that is in that argument. That we have a defenseman that you can legitimately toss up against the other perennial Norris Trophy candidates. Teams never had that, man. And
Ever.
You can see what a difference it makes. Like, you take a look at I wasn't really following hockey in '82. Most things that I am familiar with is that it was a really plucky team, gritty, and just, lunch pail kind of team, right? You look at the 2011 team, they had a really great collection of number 2, number 3 defensemen. They were deep on D. You look at the 94 team, heavy defensemen, again, same kind of scenario. A great collection of like 2 3s, on every pairing. They never had anybody like Hughes. They've never had a guy that controls the game the way he does. Like, look at that goal that he set up. Again, I don't know if he meant to bank it off the backboards to Connor Garland or if he just missed the net. But before he scored that, how long did he control the play for? Like 40 seconds in that zone? And it was just like, he does it at least once a game where he picks the puck up in the offensive zone and he's like, I'm going to make something happen. And it's so wild that after the 30 plus years that I've been following the Canucks, to see somebody that can do that and how impactful it is.
The way he walks the line. I mean, Brent Sopel did a pretty good job of walking the line. Are you comparing? No, I'm just, yeah. Like the way he walks the line, does his little like spinorama move, like his edge work is just, there's so many things to just like not pick apart, but like pinpoint of that could have been the difference on this one play. Like, you're right. He'll carry the puck for basically a full shift, and until something breaks down or they score, he basically decides how the rest of that play is going to go. And you can see that he's making a move, and he knows that it's on his stick. He knows that that play is on him, make or break. And, cut through, 2 players, and then he creates an opportunity. It just seems like he's going to decide when the play ends. It was like watching the Sedins, and we talked about this with Pettersson even the last few years, like when Pettersson would get the puck and, we'd all get excited, like, okay, something's about to happen. Well, with Quinn Hughes, it's like that times 3, because he's going to do something with the puck. You don't know what's going to happen, but by the end of that shift that it's either going to be in the net or there's going to be 2 scoring chances, and you're going to be like pulling your hair out. Not in your case, unfortunately, Dan, but you're going to,
no offense.
Yeah, no, none taken, right? It's so fun to watch a guy like that just absolutely tear apart a team, and yet you still have no idea how the play is going to finish. Like, we know what it looks like, but he always puts in like some kind of a wrinkle where you're thinking like, oh, he hasn't done that in like a long time. I forgot he did that. Mm-hmm. And to see, I can't wait to see it. But when he starts doing that in the playoffs, if he can look that effortless, even though, I mean, years of work to get to that point, if he can make it look that easy in the playoffs, I think that's one of the big ones that is going to change this team. We might not necessarily need a Pettersson until the second round. We might just need to have the guys that are going well, and like every other playoff run, sometimes it's like round 2 was Ryan Kessler, it was beast mode against Nashville, right? Mm-hmm. He basically took over that series. It wasn't as much about Roberto Luongo or the Sedins. Like, it was a Kessler and a little bit of BX in that round. Round one was
It's
definitely
matchups. It's
Mhm.
matchups, right? Like if Kessler just seemed to fit what was going on in that series, and I think Hughes has the ability to kind of do that on most teams. And one more thing that I don't think a lot of people can appreciate is that when Hughes does get it at the line, when he does dance the forecheck or go down, very, very rarely do you ever see him turn the puck over. Like,
Mhm.
think about the days of the old Tommy Larshide used to call him the riverboat gambler, Ed Jovanovski, and the forays that he would make into the offensive zone. He was exciting. He was a dashing defenseman, but it was like, it's a toss-up, Is he going to make a great play? Is he going to turn it over and it's going back odd man rush the other way? You never
Yeah.
see Hughes. You rarely ever see Hughes turn it over. And when you do, you're like, oh, Jesus, that was
Or give up the
unexpected.
blue line. Or give up the
Yeah.
blue line, I find, is the other one. I'm always watching because you're right. He doesn't give it up. But the big one is like, well, somehow he keeps it from crossing back over the blue line. And if it does happen, it's usually on the power play, and the power play just sucks at that point anyway. So it's so much fun. I think the fact that we get to talk about awards again with the Canucks, I think is a very special feeling, because if they're getting awards, whether it's coaching or defensemen or goal scorers or points or whatever, that means a lot of, they said at the beginning of the year, a lot of things have gone right, and a lot of things have gone right. It's time to put up or shut up. And yeah, I know it's gonna be a lot of fun, and we got a few games to go still. I think Ted's gonna try to catch the Vegas game on Monday, so hopefully he gets to see what this Canucks team looks like in person. Dan, we're at the hour mark here. I believe most people call that a good show at that point. I think we didn't even do top five. I didn't really
tap out time
prepared. It's getting close. I'm rear naked chokehold on myself here. I don't know. Actually kind of sounded kind of weird saying that out loud, but appreciate you coming on the show.
Hey,
yeah,
hey man, whatever you're into, I appreciate it.
whatever floats your boat, buddy. I am looking forward to some playoffs with you, and I can't wait, man. Like, it's good to see you again, good to chat with you. It's been a minute, and anything you want to talk about, promote quickly, or just what's going on with you?
No, I just was so thrilled to be able to come on here and talk hockey. I'm always incredibly flattered when you reach out and ask. And yeah, I'm just looking forward to having some fun on Twitter with all us Canuck peeps, and hopefully this is the beginning of a long ride. I hope it's really warm and studio late into the playoffs as we're covering this potentially really, really fun run.
I can't wait.
Did I lose you?
I've been I'm still here. I know I'm cutting out a bit. That's okay. Folks, this is the PP1 podcast. We're on the Hockey Podcast Network, provided in part with DraftKings. Promo code THPN. This is going to be a fun year. I cannot wait for the playoffs. I know you guys can't. Thank you so much, Dan, for coming on the show. We're going to see him really soon, and Ted will be back next week, I promise. So on behalf of Dan and me, I'm Ryan, man of many hats, wearing one anyway right now. Like I said, PP1 podcast. Go Canucks, go. Peace.